Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Josh Charbonneau. After I took my Shahada, I changed my name to Mateen. My ethnicity, background, I have a French-Canadian background. I was born here in the States. I grew up in Sumter, South Carolina. Later on, in 2008, I moved to Washington, D.C. I got married in January of this year. I went to college at Delaware Tech in Georgetown, Delaware. I studied business, and also I took my commercial driver's license. I got a commercial CDL Class A. And then when I moved to DC area, I started going to college at Prince George Community College. I'm studying international business management. Last year, I met my wife here in DC. She was here working from Panama, and we met and we started dating. And then while we were dating, I was teaching her about Islam, and she comes from a Christian background, and just like most Latin Americans, they're a Christian background. And we were just discussing things, and as we were getting to know each other, and eventually she accepted it, and she saw that what I was telling her was right from the sources and proofs, and we really liked each other and loved each other, so I proposed to her. As far as my family goes, my grandparents are strong and they're Christian. They're not just like the people who say I'm Christian and I go to church on Sunday. They're like really strong, know the Bible good, have good morals and things like this. My mom, my dad, they're both Christian too, pretty much my whole family. So they would take me to church as I was little, but I would go, and then like I believed in God, but a lot of the stuff I didn't understand. And honestly, when I became a teenager, I really was doing my own life and I wasn't really involved. I prayed to God, but I really didn't go to church or anything like that. I just knew there was a God and just prayed to Him. My parents, around when I was 9, they got divorced. So when I was 10, we had to me and my mom, we moved into a really bad area of town, and like, it's kind of like the projects. So we moved there, and life was a little different. We weren't in the good neighborhood anymore with all the people that go to church, and these people were totally different breed. You know, most people, they drink, they party, they do drugs, and you just see this. And I was 10 years old, so when I go outside to play, this is what I see, you know. And then eventually, like, my whole neighborhood is pretty much gang related. It was pretty bad. So as a kid, when you're looking for somebody to follow, you're looking for somebody, everybody inside, they have some type of need to search for something. Like as Muslims, we follow Prophet Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But, you know, at that time, I didn't know anything about Islam. I didn't know anything about Muslims. There was no Muslims. If there were, I didn't know about it because we didn't have the masjids. I was in the South, and they're a little behind as far as, you know, culturally and diverse. It's really none of that there. So I was never exposed to that. And then I kind of looked up to these guys, you know, but instead of teaching me right things, they were teaching me wrong things. They taught me how to steal, how to rob, how to carry guns, how to use drugs, how to sell drugs, how to make a living, and they lived on the streets. You know, they were just in the street life, and that's how they survived. So basically, I just wanted to follow them, and I looked up to them, so I started hanging out with them all the time, and I was learning these things, and they pretty much taught me how to survive as if I didn't need anybody, and how to make it in like the real world, out in the streets if I had to. And during that time, like, it was pretty rough. We didn't have a lot of money. It was poverty. So as a kid, instead of just dealing with what I could get from my parents or whatever, I saw other people have things. So I started wanting to get them too. So I would go out in the streets and pretty much with the gang, and we would just get things however we could, you know, and just would rob, steal, use drugs, party, all these type of things, you know. And then as you live that lifestyle, it gets kind of old, you know. If you've robbed so many people or you've done so many things, people start looking for you, and then it's like a constant life. If you're looking over your shoulder, and it gets rough. You get tired of people wanting to kill you. You get tired of fighting. You get tired of having to carry a gun, even wherever you go. Carry a gun to the mall, carry a gun everywhere. You get tired of that life, you know. And I wanted to find a way out, but I just couldn't. It seemed like I was too deep to get out of it. So I knew a friend of mine, and he converted but he didn't become a Muslim, but at the same time, he just went towards God, and he left that life alone. And I said, man, everybody was picking on him. And at that time, to me, I just went to his house. He didn't hang out. He said he stopped smoking weed, he stopped drinking, and I was like, wow, let me go see what's really going on with this guy. So I went over there, and I talked to him, and he said that he just got tired of it. And I told him I admired it. I thought it was really good that he could do that. And I told him one day I wish I could do that, but I can't, because I feel like I'm too deep. I have to carry a gun, and I have to do whatever I can do. And but I told him one day I wish I could. So not too long after that, I was coming home from a football game, and like another rival group from another side of town, they caught me walking on like a back road and tried to attack me. So I was by myself, and I just had a gun. I always carried a gun just in case, something like that would happen. So we got in a huge fight, altercation. There was a huge number of people, and I ended up shooting one of them. He didn't die, but at the same time, I shot him in the chest, and they sent me to the court. I was 16 years old, so I ended up going to court, and the judge gave me 10 years state time. So I ended up going to prison right at my 17th birthday. I was in the prison. So here I am, 16 years old, and then 17, I'm in prison. So I'm reflecting, I'm thinking. But actually, when I went to jail, most people would be scared to go to jail. But my life was so crazy at that time, I actually felt relief. I felt peace. I was like, wow, I can relax. It's so crazy. So I looked through the Bible. I was reading it from the front to the back. And as I would read, I would see things. And then, let's say 3-4 chapters later, I would see something and it said something totally different. So I would flip back here, look at this part, and then flip back and look at this part. I was like, okay, here's one thing, here's something else. I don't understand. So I ended up marking all these spots that I didn't understand in the Bible. And I would try to ask people, Christians, and they would get mad at me, and they were like, oh, you're supposed to just believe. And I was like, why am I going to believe something if I can't explain it and I don't understand it? How am I just going to believe it? That doesn't make sense. And the conclusions I was getting from the Bible, they were saying, oh, no, that's not right, But I was seeing the one God, and I was seeing that Jesus was a prophet, and these other things that later on I came to find out that Islam teaches. So through my journeys, on my way to the prison, they send you to a processing center. And it's like everybody goes there after you get your sentence, and they figure out what prison they're going to put you in or whatever. So I ran across a Muslim, and he was put in the room with me, alhamdulillah, it's a sign, I didn't know anything about Muslims. He called the adhan in the room, and I had no idea what he was doing. He was praying, and I was like, wow, what is this? So I started asking him a lot of questions, and then he seemed to answer all of my questions I had with the Bible. He just answered everything, and right then I knew that the way he explained everything, it made perfect sense. So I said, I thought to myself, I said, this is what I want to do. So I told him, I said, hey man, I want to become a Muslim. That's what I want to do. And he said, okay, I want you to learn your salat and your prayer so that when you become a Muslim, you'll be able to pray right away, and you'll know your prayers. You won't miss anything. So I started to learn the prayers. He wrote them for me, and I learned the Fatiha, and then all of a sudden I got shipped away to my prison. I didn't get to finish, so I didn't actually take my Shahada. So when I got to the prison, I ended up meeting somebody from my hometown. There was one person in my dorm that was from my hometown, and he was a Muslim. It was like another sign. So I went to him, and he taught me, and he taught me the prayer. As soon as I learned the prayer, he gave me my Kalima Shahada. And ever since then, I've just been making salat and learning and reading. So after I learned my salat and the brother finished teaching me, I took my Shahada when I was 17 years old in 1999. And then after that, it was pretty much, I just would read and study and learn. I ordered a lot of books from different places, different masjids around. I would just find out different addresses and different places I could order, and then some places would send you books free. And pretty much that's what I would do. I would just learn, and during all that time, I ended up spending 9 years in prison. I would just read and read and read, and book after book, and that's how I would just teach myself. And then I met some other brothers that knew some Arabic. They didn't know like fluent spoken Arabic, but they could read and understand the Quran. So what I did was I just had them teach me and the letters in the Arabic, and we started working together with grammar, and then we ended up learning how to read the Quran, and we just kept studying. And then as we grew, we would just teach other people and just try to work on ourselves, because we all came from that lifestyle, and we were all together, and we all formed like a solid structure. It was pretty beautiful because everybody from all different areas, we all came together. We'd eat together, work out together, study together. We just like had a really good brotherhood, and we all just supported each other and learned and taught each other, and help each other out, because like somebody might have a weakness that you overcome, and then you might have a weakness, the other person, you can help each other. So we all just pretty much tried to stop, drinking, drugs, because, you think you're in prison, it's not there, but it is there. They still have all those things in there too, the temptations, the drugs, the alcohol, the gambling. But when you come to Islam, you start reading about people, and you start learning about Rasulullah, you start learning about Ahlul Bayt, you start learning about some Sahaba, and you see how their character was. And then you just want to be like them, you study and learn from their life. And then that's how a lot of us changed, because we heard the message and we saw how the companions and how the imams and how Rasulullah carried themselves, and we wanted to be like that. Because a lot of us were on the street, and like I said, we lived that lifestyle where we were kind of like warriors, but for the wrong cause. We were fighting for a bad cause. We were just fighting for whatever, territory, or to survive, or who's going to sell drugs on this corner, or who's going to do what. So we all had that fighting spirit in us, but we had it in the wrong direction. So a lot of things that appealed to us, to change us, was when you hear about Imam Ali alayhi salam and the battles. You hear what he did in battle, and how he lifted the gate in Khaybar, and how he slaughtered the enemies, and he really fought hard, and that appealed to us. We looked at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, how he sacrificed everything, and he was loyal to his cause. And that just struck us, and struck me personally really hard. And a lot of the youth, especially that came from those gangs, when they heard the stories of the imams and how they fought, it really appealed to them, and they were converting at a high rate, to become Shia because of these characteristics. They said, hey, look at these guys. They were really stand-up people, and they fought and they struggled and they died for a righteous cause. And if we're fighters and we have this in our spirit, we want to fight for a good cause too, and we want to stand up and live our life righteous. And we know that if whatever way we live our life, we live like them, then we'll go to paradise too. Because the life we were living, we don't know where we're going to go. We might go to hellfire, we might die in a wrong state, or anything. There was this book that I read called Tears and Tributes. It's about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and it's pretty much like a story. It's written in a novel. The book really influenced me. I read a lot of different books about Hussein, but this book, it touches your soul, makes you cry when you read it. And I've seen some of the guys when I was in the prison, I would be reading, and it's like you're in prison, you're reading the book, and you don't want somebody to walk by and see you crying. It's not really the right place to do that, but the book would make you cry. And I saw some of the toughest guys. They weren't Muslim or anything. They might have killed a few people on the street, and they were really tough. Nobody messed with them. And I would tell the guys, I was like, hey, I bet you can't read this book and not cry. There's no way. I said, if you read this book, you're going to cry. I guarantee it. And they're all tough. They're like, no, I could read the book. I'm not going to cry. I was like, okay, just go ahead and read it. It's a short book. I think you can handle it. It's, maybe 150 pages or something like that. I'd give them the book, and none of them couldn't finish it. Whenever they read it, they would cry every time. When I told my family about my conversion to Islam, they were pretty upset because they just knew what they saw here. A lot of people, they didn't even know that there were all different ethnicities of Muslims. They thought it was just the black Muslims, from what they see here, black American Muslims, and like the Nation of Islam and things like that. So a lot of people, they didn't really understand. They were like, oh, you're a white Muslim, and they looked at me kind of different, you know. And because most of the Muslims where I was at in the prison, generally speaking, the population was mostly black Americans. So most of the Muslims were of that ethnicity too. So I told them about it, and my grandpa, he's been all over the world in the Air Force. He's been to like a whole lot of countries, most of the countries, the Middle East. He's been all over Latin America, all over Africa. So he knows about Islam. He's read the Quran, read Hadith. And at that time, I was 17 when I told him. I was so excited about it that I found something that I wanted to share it and tell everybody. So he would always engage me in like dialogue when he came to visit me. But the brother who was the imam, he taught me, and it just so happened his visitation was the same time as mine. So when my grandpa would ask me things I couldn't answer, I was just new to this, and I would walk over to his table and be like, "Hey brother, can you answer this really quick?" And he'd tell me, and I would come back. And then, you know, after a few months of you studying Islam, it's the truth. You know, it's haq, it's powerful. So it said the truth will knock and crush falsehood. So even though a lot of times he's studied his whole life in Christianity, I was bringing points that was making him say, wow, like, that's a good question, and things like that. And he couldn't understand. It was kind of hard for people to fathom. It was like, hey, last year you were drinking and on drugs, and you didn't have any education really, because I went to school, high school, for 5 months, 6 months, and then I dropped out and got my GED. I got my GED when I went to prison, but I didn't really have education, and I was coming with really, you know, good information. They couldn't understand it. Like, how did he learn this stuff? Well, from the beginning, the community was, like I said, 90% Ahlul Bayt. So people started asking me, hey, you're Muslim, what are you? Are you Shia, or are you Sunni, or what are you? And I was like, I don't know anything about these names, you know, I just know that I'm a Muslim. And people started pressuring me to become, they said, oh, just say you're a Sunni, just say you're a Sunni, and that's it, you know, don't get into that stuff, but always say you're a Sunni. And I was like, well, that made me think, because you know, I wanted to inquire and find out what is a Sunni. If I want to say I'm a Sunni, I want to know what it is. So I started asking, and the most knowledgeable person that I saw was the brother who was the head of the community. So I would ask him a lot of questions about this, and he was a Shia. So he taught me, and I learned a lot from him. And when I came down and looked at it, the brothers who were Shia were more knowledgeable, and what they said made sense. So I would say from the beginning, I learned about Islam through Ahlul Bayt. I read the books. I started ordering the books from different Shia organizations. I get books from Iran. I get books from here in New York and all over. And I would just basically just study from those books and learn Islam from those books. Before converting to Islam, I had no idea what Islam was, because in my area there were no masjids, there were no Muslims, and if there were, I didn't know about it because they weren't on TV, they weren't in the media. This was in the 90s, the late 90s. So, and I was young too, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of people, a lot of things. I was basically hanging out with my own age group and teenagers, and nobody was Muslim. While I was in prison, eventually the friends that you had outside in the real world, they'll come through the system eventually, and sometimes you'll run into them. So I ran into a few of my old friends later on down the line. Maybe I had been Muslim like 3-4 years, and I had gained some knowledge about Islam. I ran across some friends I went to school with, or some friends I was running the streets with, and actually a few of them, they became my roommate, and we were in there, and they would see me make salat, and they would always ask me, they called me by my old name, Josh, and they were like, hey Josh, let's go gamble, or let's go, my friend's got some weed, let's go smoke weed while we're locked up. And I was like, no man, I told you I'm Muslim now, I don't do that stuff. I'm trying to change. I'm not trying to get out and come right back to jail. I'm trying to get out and stay out. And I was saying those things weren't helping me. And they looked at me and they were like, wow, you know, you changed. And cause some of them really couldn't believe it, because most of the time I was the one calling everybody to go do haram and wrong things. And they wondered what changed me. They were like, they'd look at me after and be like, wow, like, what did you do? Like, they start asking questions. So they start asking questions, that opens the door for you. You know, a lot of times if you go to somebody with the knowledge, they'll push it away because they're not ready. Nobody can change you except you. You got to change yourself. You got to want to change. If you don't want to change, I could talk to you all day and it's not going to do any good. So these people, they wanted to change, but they really didn't know how to change. So then I was just telling them the steps that I went through and started talking to him about Allah and who Allah is and about the Day of Judgment and that everything we do here we're going to have to answer for. And then when you start thinking like that, you start thinking about what you do here. You're like, hey, I don't want to do that because I'm going to have to answer for that later. And you start holding yourself accountable for the things. And basically, it was just showing them and teaching them about the personalities of Ahlul Bayt and how they lived their life and how they were excellent role models. You know, it says Rasulullah was the Uswatun Hasana, the best of examples. So I would just give them the examples of them and how they lived their life. Yeah, the friends that I had, they ended up taking, I wouldn't say 3 of them that I can recall that I had from in my previous life when I was living that lifestyle. Now they're Muslims. 2 of them are in South Carolina and 1 is here in nearby in Delaware. And it was kind of funny because they didn't know anything about Islam. One day I was making salat outside, and it's like a huge baseball field, and I was making salat outside. They thought I was exercising. They were like, what are you doing over there? Are you exercising? So they had no idea about Islam. I just started teaching them. And Muslims were pretty well respected, you know, because the way we carry ourselves, other people, even if they're not living that, they're living a haram lifestyle, and back in the prison they respected us because we were sticking to what we said and we were loyal and we were honest people. I think that the Ahlul Bayt is not in the media like enough, like it should be, because most of the media is drawn by people that say they're Muslims, but they're really killing Muslims. They're killing Americans, they're killing Muslims, they're like the Taliban, the Bin Laden, all these people. They kill the Shia in their countries, and then like Saddam Hussein, all these people. But if you come to the West, everybody thinks those are Muslims. They just put everybody under one big blanket and call everybody a Muslim. And so they have no idea there's distinguished. They have no idea that Muslims are being oppressed too. You know, thousands and thousands of people were killed in Iraq by Saddam Hussein, supposedly a Muslim. In Afghanistan, Taliban killed Muslims. Pakistan, and during Ashura, in Iraq during Ashura, they kill Muslims. They have car bombs, suicide bombers. There's Muslims dying, you know. It's just not Christians. Because a lot of times they'll hype up on the TV that just Christians are dying or churches are being bombed. Muslims are dying too. So why are these Muslims dying? Who are these Muslims? Why would the other people who say they're Muslims want to kill them? You know, we don't have an outlet for Ahlul Bayt to teach about these Muslims and what they believed in and why they're oppressed and how to get their struggle, you know, in the mainstream media, because that was the thing I had an issue with my family when I came home. They didn't like Muslims because of what they saw on TV. They didn't know anything about Ahlul Bayt or Shia or anything like that. So I had to show them the difference between the Wahhabi Muslims and the terrorists and the people that are killing Muslims and the people that say, oh, if you don't believe the way we do, then you're a disbeliever. They don't like anybody. You have to have their opinion. I showed my family that, hey, these people, they say they're Muslim, but they don't like anybody else. If you differ in their opinion one little bit, they would say you're a disbeliever and they would say that you could kill the person. These people say that you kill 10 Shia, you go to Jannah and go to heaven. These are the people that are giving Islam a bad name. So when I showed him that there was another group of Muslims that were good and had good morality and were good people and you know their lessons and teachings were true and pure, they followed the Quran, then they started to understand, hey, wait a minute, these guys are good, but these other guys are giving you a bad name. And in my grandpa's words, he said, you guys should do something about that. You should make news or teachings and put it out there to show, you know, and stand up for yourself and show that these guys aren't what they say they are. They say they're Muslims, but they're not. So that falls back on us, that we have to teach and spread the message and get it out there and show our side of the story. I think it would be really important to have a channel specifically for this on satellite or on the online or somewhere where you could refer people to. You could refer people to the message if somebody comes to you, because sometimes it's like way too big a job for one person, that you could refer them to the channel or some program that you watched on the channel that they can go back and reference and say, hey, I'm going to email you the link for the show that I want you to watch. This might be 30 minutes or whatever, and watch this show and see what you think for yourself. And that would help immensely, like really great. It would help. What I would think for somebody who's searching for the right path is you'd have to be open-minded. Don't take things on face value. Take things, you have to go study it. Everybody who taught me, they would tell me things, but they would say, hey, don't take my word for it. Don't say, brother so-and-so told you, because that's not a credible reference. He said, here's the book that I got out of. You read the book for yourself, and then you see. So that way if somebody asks you, hey, you could say, I saw it in the book myself. I read it in the book, and this is the book, and this is the page number, or whatever. You have your sources. You just don't hear it from word of mouth, because it's what a lot of people do. They just take their religion as like hearsay, and they just take the words of the priest or the rabbi or the scholar or whoever, the imam, and they don't ever research it. They don't ever question it. And these people aren't infallible, so we should learn on our own, and read and do the research, so that way we're 100% sure of what we're doing, because we're the ones that are going to be held accountable for what we know. When I think of Ahlul Bayt, I just think of their loyalty to the message of Islam and how they stuck to it no matter what adversities came their way. They stuck to it and were even willing to give their lives away for it. Whatever, they went to some of the imams, the Ahlul Bayt, they ended up having to go to prison because they wouldn't give up the message. Some of them, they died. They got slaughtered because they didn't give up the message. All of them, they stuck to the path no matter what, And I think that gives a really good example for us, that no matter what adversity we face here or wherever you're at, even if people look at you different or you're afraid people are going to look at you strange because you're a Muslim now, or you decide to wear the hijab now, you change your lifestyle, you still should stick to the path because it's the truth, and you stick to the truth no matter what, just like they did. That's a good lesson for us to live by. When I think about Imam Hussein, I think about somebody who stood up for the religion. If he wouldn't have done that, then we wouldn't have the religion as it is today, because so many people were trying to corrupt it and change it and trying to do whatever they wanted to do. They just wanted to change Islam totally, the enemies. They couldn't change it from the outside, so they came in the inside and tried to change it from within. But the ruler of the time, Yazid, tried to make everybody submit and pay allegiance to him. So if you paid allegiance to him, it's pretty much you agreed with whatever he was doing and all that nonsense that he was doing. So Imam Hussein never gave in. He never surrendered. He never submitted to something that was wrong. He always stood up for what was right, even if he had to die for it, or even if his whole family, all his friends, everything, he stood up for what was right. And that awakened the people to see that, hey, this is the real religion, and this is what he died for, and this is what we should stand for. And we should never stand for anything else other than that, the real Islam. Our duty towards the Imam of the time would be to study and live our life according to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and to teach others about Ahlul Bayt and spread the message as much as we can, so that we can get people in obedience, because I'm sure that's what he would want. He would teach the people to obey Allah and teach the people to follow the guidance of Rasulullah and just try to be the best person that you can be. When I was reading books about Ahlul Bayt, there was a book called Abu Dharr Ghafari. It was one of the companions of Rasulullah, and he was one of the really firm followers of Imam Ali alayhi salam after the death of Rasulullah. He stuck with Imam Ali. He spoke out against the Khalifa of all the previous caliphs, and his message stuck to me. It was because before he took his Shahada, he was living a life of crime. He was a highway robber, and he used to rob all the people that came across the path. His tribe was like fierce. Everybody feared them, and nobody wanted to go that way because his whole tribe were like bandits, They lived on the street and they robbed people. And that made me think, because when he took his Shahada, he went in search and took his Shahada, and he stuck by Rasulullah. And he even went out and told everybody after he took his Shahada, he went into Mecca and said, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. And he did it, and they beat him. And then he got back up, and he did it again, and they beat him. And he did it 3 times until Abbas had to jump on top of him and stop it and say, you know who this man is? He's like the fierce tribe, and you have to do business, and you have to pass through his way. He said, you don't want to do that. Rasulullah told him to leave. So to leave and go back to his tribe, come back later. So when he went back, he taught his whole tribe, and everybody converted to Islam. So he came back, and everybody was Muslim. And later he said that there was no man more truthful under the sky than Abu Dhar. So I looked at him, I was like, look, he lived this way, and then he changed and became one of the most truthful people, one of the best of people. He went from somebody who would rob you to somebody who was the most truthful, the best, one of the best people. And he stuck by Imam Ali alayhi salam. So what made me look at that was like, if he can change, and I looked at his transformation and how he changed, and then I said, hey, if he can change, if somebody can change like that, then that allowed me to see a window, like an open light for change, that I could do the same thing. One person that sticks out to me particularly is Imam Zain al-Abidin, because he lived through Karbala. He lived in the good times too, when things were good. And then he went to Karbala and Ashura, and he saw what happened to his whole family, all his friends, his brothers, his uncle, his father, everybody got slaughtered. He witnessed all this. He wanted to fight, but he couldn't because he was sick. He tried, and he had the spirit, but he just he couldn't fight. Because if he died, the imamate would have been ceased at that point. But he was able to live through that, and he witnessed all the tragedies of Karbala and all these things. And he even had to march through the desert with chains on him and getting beat. And still he remained strong. They beat him like physically, but spiritually and mentally he was really strong. And he stood up and spoke. And most person who would go through something like that would be, they wouldn't be able to function anymore. But he stood up in the court and thousands of people and spoke out against the leader of the time. That'd be like going out and talking against the president. And he spoke out in such an elegant way that he showed everybody and brought the whole crowd to tears. And even though he was in prison, he would still make salat and make prayer until his ankles would swell. And he was still the solid backbone for his whole family, and everybody turned to him, and he was able to provide peace for them, And I just look at that as like, whatever we go through in life, it could never compare to what he went through. And he remained firm and strong and went through the trials and tribulations. That shows me that whatever I go through is nothing compared to that. So I should be able to remain strong too. So I gained strength from the sufferings and the things that he went through. It's like they say that Gandhi learned from Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He said he learned how to gain victory even though you're oppressed by looking at the story and the lesson of Imam Hussein. So that's a good, important lesson for each and every one of us. I think the path of Ahlul Bayt in particular has the answers for most of all our problems. Everything you should be able to find if you study the history and the life of Rasulullah and then Fatima and then all the Imams, you should be able to find a solution for everything. And in the Quran, you have a solution for everything. It's all there. You just have to find it. You just have to go search and research and study, and then you'll find a solution for all of our problems. My suggestions for AHTV would be to make more documentaries about the lives of each individual imam, about what they went through and what their struggle was and what their purpose and all the things they fulfilled during their lifetime, and to make it in English so that the Americans can understand and propagate that message here. That way we have more converts and we have more knowledgeable people, because we just don't need numbers. We need people who actually know what they're believing and know what they're practicing and able to teach it to somebody else. Because it's better to have one knowledgeable person. It says one knowledgeable person is harder on the shaitan than 1,000 ignorant worshippers. So if we have these things, we'll gain more knowledge, and then as we learn the knowledge, we can practice it, and when we practice it, we can teach it to other people.